Okay, so it's been a couple of weeks. When we last left off, we were going to, or your assignment was to take all of the Renderman presets in the preset browser and assign them to your robots accordingly as a starting point. And now we are ready to move beyond that and actually start modifying some of these presets and adding more detail and more variation. Because I've got 3 presets assigned here. I've got an iron, I've got a blue glass, and then I've got a matte plastic. They look nice, and the light is working well, but there's no materials in real life that are this kind of perfect, right? There's always going to be some sort of imperfection or variation into the surface. And so we want to start kind of moving towards that. I'm also going to cover a few of the just general settings for these shaders. I'm not going to get too in-depth. I'm not going to talk about UV unwrapping. So let's just kind of jump in here. So I'm going to start with just this red plastic one. And so when we select an object, if we go to the attribute editor, you will see at the top one of the tabs will be the material that you have assigned, or if you have multiple materials assigned, you'll see all the materials listed. So that's one way you can get to these settings. You can also get to them by opening up your Hypershade editor. Okay, in the Hypershade, screen real estate is going to be a little bit of a challenge here. In the Hypershade, we've got similar options. I can click on my red plastic. In my material viewer, I have the Renderman node selected. And it looks like my presets are taking forever to load. It just doesn't want to do it, which is why I've got my IPR render going instead. So I'm going to leave my Hypershade off to the side for now. It's still open, but I'll only bring it on screen when I need it. For now, I'm just going to, in the attribute editor, I'm just going to kind of worry about the options that we have here. So first thing we have up here, we've got a name. So I'm going to leave it at red plastic bulb. This is where you name your materials, or your shaders, excuse me. We've got a couple buttons on the side, and these are connections. So as we add more complicated and complex materials, these shaders are built out of a series of nodes. Okay, you may or may not have worked in a program that uses nodes before, but you can think of nodes as little like pieces that together form the finished shader. So it's like maybe Legos. You need certain types of bricks in order to make your desired output, whatever that is. If you're making a Lego car, you need wheels and you need a body, and you probably need a steering wheel and all of that. So it's that kind of concept behind the node editor, and I'm sure there's somebody who works in the node editor daily could give you a much more eloquent explanation, but suffice it to say, for now, there are nodes, and we will briefly deal more with them in a bit. But you can use these in the attribute editor, these boxes with the arrows. These will allow you to move up and down the chain. So as you get more and more nodes in the shader network, that will allow you to move up and down the chain. Again, I'll mention this again when it becomes relevant, but just planting that seed of information now so that when you need it, you'll remember it. Pixar service attributes, input material. By the way, you can hover over all of these and it will give you a tooltip. So this will allow you to connect to Pixar layer or layer mixer node, or not. We'll deal a little bit with layer mixers, but not a ton. You can generally ignore that for now. First important section that we'll use all the time is the diffuse section. We've got 3 options in there. We have gain, color, and roughness. So the gain is kind of the intensity. So as I bring the gain down, it moves to black, and I bring it up, it returns to its full color. And then we have color, and this one is fairly obvious and straightforward. Click on the color swatch, and you have a bunch of different ways that you can choose color. You can do RGB. You've got HSV sliders here. You also have, you can go RGB values if you prefer. It will also remember your most recently used values. So if you're trying to match colors, you will see your, I guess, what is that, 10 or 12 most recent, looks like 12 most recent colors that you use. You've also got a color picker, which will sample color from anywhere in the Maya window. So if you really like this, red-orange on the Pixar ball up here, you can sample that, and we'll change it to that color, which I actually do really like that color. That's color, and then we have roughness. So roughness is kind of how diffuse the light is on the surface. Now, this is already in the diffuse section of the shader. There's also a specular, which is kind of your more mirror-like highlights and reflections. But this will still, it will still affect the surface. So the best way to kind of understand that is just to start messing with it. And we can see it is super subtle. And if my material viewer here would work, you'd have a better sense of it, but for whatever reason, this does not seem to want to update. So I quit out of my IPR render, closed the Hypershade window, and reopened it, and now you can see that it has updated. So you'll get a better sense of how these sliders affect the object because in the material viewer. So you want to make sure you're on Renderman, because these are Renderman materials that we're working with. This next drop down is all the different kind of preset shapes that you can use. So this shader ball is kind of a standard-ish great example of how this material will look on a variety of different surfaces, because we've got the spherical form, we've got a bunch of edges, we've got shadows, and we've got highlights. Plenty of things for the light to catch and interact with and bounce off of. So that's why shapes like this are so common. But you can also preview it on cloth. Teapot is another common one. I believe that was really popular in 3ds Max, I think. Ocean. A glass fill. Glass splash. So if you're working with more fluid-based things, just a regular sphere, just a regular plane, keep it on shader ball. And then lastly, in this final one, we have kind of environments. So you can just keep it off and just do kind of the black environment, or you can do a variety of interiors. So different lighting situations that you can apply and use to analyze how this shader works in those different environments. Okay, I'm going to keep that off for now. Okay, so again, we've got gain, we've got color, and this slider will adjust the brightness of that color too. And then roughness. So we can have no roughness, and then we have a lot of roughness. And as we increase the roughness, it gets more even in tone, and it also gets a little bit darker, because that surface, because it's rougher, it isn't reflecting as much light. And the way that we see things is we're perceiving reflected light. That's how our eyes work, that's how cameras work, is it's all reflected light. So if you make something rougher and it reflects less light is getting to our eyes, and it's going to appear darker. Okay, so that is how the roughness kind of affects the diffuse. And then underneath it, we've got some advanced options, including bump, which I will get to in a minute. I will come back to that. Next, we have the primary specular section. And the first option we have here is artistic or physical. And so this is different ways to calculate, or in this case, modes of specular highlights and reflections. So again, specular is the harder kind of mirror-like reflections, and I'm clicking all the wrong things right now. Where'd it go? So primary specular. There we go. Okay. So if we hover over artistic, you'll see artistic mode uses face and edge color and Fresnel exponent. Physical mode uses refractive index and extinction coefficient, as in Pixar LM BXDF. The real takeaway is you can get more physically accurate renders out of the physical mode, as you might suspect. It's a little bit harder to work with, and we're not going to do it. And we're not going to work with it. So we're just going to stay in artistic mode, keep things fairly simple. Next, we have face color, edge color. So face color is the specular highlight color on the face of it. So you see in the center here, as I bring that up, that brightens. All right. The edge color, as you may expect, is the edges. Bring that down. Let's see if we find a good example here. Maybe if we go to sphere, it might be a little easier to see. Let's see. No, I think we need the shader ball again. The teapot. Okay, so yeah, the edge color is not doing a ton on these examples. See if we can make this a little bit bigger. Whoops, whoops, whoops. I've ruined everything. Obviously, as you can see, you can change around the layout of your hypershade. So the edge is going to be the specular highlight along the edges. If we kind of bring that up, maybe we'll see. So you get a little bit more here on the edges. Next, we have Fresnel exponent. And this is kind of how it pushes the specular highlights kind of to the outside or to the inside. And I think shader ball is going to be sphere is going to be the way to really visualize this. So 0.5 is kind of an average middle of the road. If we go down to 0, you see it blooms a little bit more from the center. Kind of washes things out a little bit. And then as we increase it, that goes away. Again, as you kind of play around with these, you'll get a better sense of how this is working. But yeah, 0.5, or not 0.5, 5 is a good, safe place to be. And then we have roughness. Roughness is probably the most dramatic influence. So if we bring that all the way down, we've got a perfect mirror-like reflection. Now back to shader ball 2. Okay. Now this feels really glossy. You can even see the reflection of itself in the surface. As we bring that up, there we go, a little bit halfway, or a little less than halfway, that square highlight starts to blur. We still kind of get a little bit of a sense of a reflection here, but it's definitely going away. And then as we go all the way up, that disappears even more. Okay, so that's the roughness. And that's primary specular. So I'm going to keep that sharpish, something like that. We also have some advanced features, specular model, different kind of ways to calculate it. I'm not super sure of the difference, and I don't know if the tooltip will tell us. Let's see. Yeah, so both are competitively good models. If you need to match the look to existing BXDF, use GGX. Beckman highlight is sharper, while GGX provides softer fall off. There's no set rule. Pick the model which delivers the targeted visual result you're after. So, all that to say, use whatever looks the best. And it will vary depending on the application, and that's okay. Below that, again, this is in the Advanced tab, we have anisotropy, which, if we remember, is the aspherical specular highlights. Okay, so the elongated specular highlights that you often see in stainless steel. Like so. Okay, these elongated specular highlights here. That's anisotropy. This is anisotropic as well. Right here is a great example. Okay. It's probably the best one. So as we adjust that, let's start. 0 is the default. So move it to the right. Oh, let me also turn up the roughness just a touch. Now I'm going to go to the sphere and make it a little bit more obvious. It starts to elongate that direction. Now the slider itself will only go between -1 and 1. You can see it goes a little horizontal on the left, a little vertical on the right. But you can type in higher values. So I can go 5. And, oh, there we go. Just keep cranking it. It'll stretch out a little bit more, I guess. Well, it's not stretching out nearly as much as I want it to. Though I suspect if I do, it's right on the teapot. How high can we go? See, that's stretching out more. Whereas if I just go back to 0, doesn't stretch out as much. Okay, it's not really showing. We may need to add some bump in order for that to really present itself. I'm going to set that back to 0. We got another location where we can add a bump map. Again, we'll talk about bumps in a second. But we also have rough specular. So this is primary specular that we've dealt with so far. But we can add a secondary... come on, zoom in. Whoa, whoa. As you can see, you can zoom in the material viewer. I've gone too far. Oh my goodness. Can I just reset the view? I've ruined everything. Stand by. Just had to close and reopen it, and everything's back to normal. So rough specular can add a secondary specular highlight without having to add multiple layers, whatever. So you can bring the face color up a little bit, bring the edge color up a little bit. Maybe not that much, but okay. So now we get this kind of secondary bloom to go with our highlights. It adds a little bit more dimension there. It's probably a little too much, but okay, you kind of get the idea there. Next, scrolling down a little bit more, we have clear coat. So this is perfect for car paint, which we'll do a little bit later. The clear coat is like an additional varnish polyurethane finish over the top that is really there just for gloss. So clear coat, you can see this same controls as all the other specular. Now you can see as I bring that clear coat up, now we've got additional reflections. And this surface is really kind of starting to come alive. And we can make this a little bit rougher. So now we have our primary specular highlight, which is this strong square highlight. We've got our rough specular, which is this kind of softer bloom around it. And then we have our clear coat, which is all these additional highlights and reflections over the top of that. And you can even do an isotropic clear coat as well. I know there's a ton of options. The next thing that I want to, well, yeah, okay, we'll do a little bit of iridescence too. So iridescence is like the pearlescent paint on sports cars sometimes, where if you walk around it, it'll look like it's shifting colors. That's iridescence.
Love that.
And so we can actually bring that into this model too. And in this case, I'm actually going to go to IPR. Launch that. Okay, so now you can see it on the sphere, as we've got this color gradient here on the side. Oops. And as I kind of come around the orbit around. You can see how that kind of updates, right? Oops, too far. Okay, so that's iridescence. You can certainly use it. I encourage you to use it very subtly if you do decide to use it. It's generally not necessary. But again, if you do use it, subtlety is king. So I'm going to use, we'll start with the base orange that I had, and then the secondary color. I'm going to start with that orange, and then I'm just going to make it just a little bit kind of lighter. I'll go a little bit further. Here, let's go back to HSV too. Okay. So now that's coming off more natural than the kind of over-the-top garish color that we were getting before. Oops. I keep hiding my window. Where'd it go? My window disappeared. I don't know what happened. Yeah, I can see that. That's more of a natural gradient than something super bold and garish. Okay, so that is the general rundown of those settings. Now, if I want to get rid of the iridescence, because I don't want to actually use it, if I just turn the face and the edge gain down to 0, that will go away. Okay, that will basically disable it. I'm also going to disable the clear coat, so bring the face and edge color of the clear coat down to 0. And the same thing for the, well, no, I'll leave rough specular, that's fine. So that is kind of the basic rundown. Now let's talk about that bump map thing that I was kept glossing over, if you will. So a bump map is a way to apply a surface texture in what you might traditionally think of as a surface texture. When you think of something being textured, you know, whether that be like a textured ceiling or, you know, you talk about the texture of fabrics all the time. It's the variations in the surface or what you're referring to usually. The term texture covers a lot more in 3D, but bump mapping is that kind of traditional sense of what a texture is, right? So that's what we're going to use it for. And I'm going to start with a very kind of basic example, and then we'll build up from there. So I've got this ground plane, and I gave you all some textures to use. So on this ground plane, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a new material. I'm not going to use a preset. I'm just going to right-click on it, and I'm going to go to Assign New Material. And then in my Renderman section, I'm going to choose Pixar Surface, right? PXR Surface, right here. This is the shader that all of the presets are built off of. Okay, so all the controls will be the same. It's just not going to give you a starting point. It's just going to turn it blue. So I'm going to click on Pixar Surface. And actually, it doesn't turn it blue. It just turns it gray. So I'm going to name this. I'm going to call it, this is the shader, so I'm going to call this Brick Pavers. All right. And so the way that you apply textures to shaders is this little checker box right next to all of these different options. And anytime there's a checkbox or a checkered box, it's somewhere that you can apply texture or an additional shader node, things of that nature. So let's start with just kind of the basic stuff inside of Maya. So I click this checker box, It says create render node. Okay, these are nodes coming back again, right? Lego bricks. And I've got a ton of different options. But let's start with just really simple checker. Okay, just right there at the top of the list. I'm going to choose checker. Now, initially I don't see anything. If I hit 6 on the number pad, this will show my textured map view. Okay, my textured view. Now you can see that the texture has been applied. All right. It's also changed my attribute editor to this checker tab, and now I don't have my my brick paver tab there anymore. Okay. So what this has done, I'm gonna bring my hypershade over here, is it's added a couple of render nodes. And I can see those if I right-click on my brick paver shader and go to Graph Network. I can see my shaders that's added. Also, if you want a cleaner view of this, if you just go to Windows and then Node Editor, you can see that a little bit better. Okay, but this just has the checker. So you want to go up to Input and Output Connections, this little button right here, and that's going to graph all of your nodes. All right. Now, there's so much you can do with nodes, and a majority of kind of proper finished shader building happens in a node editor. We're not going to deal with that because that's, outside the scope of this class. But this is a great way to kind of see how things are working and how things are flowing together. Okay, so we've got our surface, and if I hit 2, it will show me the connections. And if I hit 3, it'll show you all the possible connections. All right, I'm going to just select them all and hit 3 so you can see, get a sense of how much is going on, right? There's a lot. Look at all those different options that can be applied to that Pixar node, right? There's a lot. But just to give you a sense of what's going on. So we have our surface, right? This is like the final output. This is the end product. This is the sum of all the previous parts. Then we have our brick pavers, which is that shader that we added and named, right? That's just the Pixar surface. And then we have our texture, which is checker. And then we have this node called Place 2D Texture. Okay. Again, it's probably might be a little easier for you to kind of work with this in the Hypershade editor. So you can right-click and graph the network, and you can just kind of, as you click through these different nodes, you can see the properties and the attributes that you can adjust change. All right, so if I click on brick pavers, I can adjust all of the shader options. If I click on checker, here's where I can actually change the color of the checker pattern. So if I want to go an orange, oops, I do want to do, okay, orange and, I don't know, oops. That's a horrible color. Wow. That is spectacularly bad. Let's go red. A darker red, maybe. It's slightly less offensive. Okay, whatever. It's an example. You can see it. Oh god, that's so bad. All right, hold on. We're gonna not do that. Let's go with actually, let's go with wild colors. They might clinch the playoffs tonight, so let's give them some moral support. How about that? It really doesn't look good as a checker, though. That's the problem, is that the checker texture is just not great. Okay. So we've got our checker pattern, and I'm going to be picky here. Let's go with there. That's less offensive. All right. So we've got a checker pattern. We can make a few adjustments there. And then Place 2D Texture node is a really important node because this allows you to, as the name might indicate, change how it is placed. So we've got coverage, which if the coverage is at 1, it's going to cover everything. If we set that coverage to like 0.5 in each direction, it's only going to cover a quarter of it, a quarter of the surface, right? because we're going only halfway in one direction and halfway in the other direction. But I almost always keep that at 1. We can translate. So if we translate, and we'll just do like maybe 0.1, it's going to shift it over a little bit. And so if you need to shift it for some reason, you can. We can rotate. You can see how that's affected on the shader ball. And then here's a really important one, is the repeat UV. So right now it's at 4 and 4, so it's going to repeat 4 times. If we set that to 1, it's only going to repeat itself once, right? So that's what the texture itself looks like. But if we go to, let's say 10, higher number, it's going to make it a smaller texture. That might seem counterintuitive, but you can think of it as it's copying itself more times. So it's fitting more copies of itself in the same space. So it's going to scale it down. Okay. So that's kind of applying the texture. Go back to my brick pavers. And that is, again, just the kind of an internal texture there. If you decide that, you know what, I don't like that shader, and I wouldn't blame you if you did feel that way, you can right-click on the name and say break connection. That will completely get rid of it, and that is, we've just got this default gross color left over, so I'm just going to desaturate that and make that less obnoxious. Okay. So now if we want to give it a more interesting texture and actually apply an image, we can go to the same thing, but this time instead of choosing checker, I'm going to choose file. If I click on file, it's going to open up this file node, and now I can, where it says image name, I can navigate to an image and select it. Okay, so I'm going to navigate to my brick pavers folder and choose brick paver diff, which stands for diffuse, which is the color, and click open. Okay, and now I have bricks applied to my plane. All right. Now, one note about how I managed to quickly get to my brick pavers. This is kind of going back a little bit to setting your project in Maya. If you go to File, Set Project, and choose whatever project that you're working in, then at the same time, in that project, which that is not the project, that is a different thing. Okay, so here's my project. In my source images folder, that's where I put my brick pavers. That's where I encourage you to put all of your textures, whatever you're using to create, should go into source images. The images folder is where renders go. Okay, so source images, brick pavers is how I have that organized. Okay, so now that I have that applied, it kind of looks like a brick ground, but I think it's a little bit too large. So I'm going to go to my hypershade, and I'm going to right-click on brick pavers and regraph the network to get rid of the other stuff that I don't want. And then my place 2D texture node, I'm going to set my repeat UV. Let's go to like maybe 5 and 5. I think will be good. Yep, that looks pretty good. Okay. And now I'm going to hit render and see what we got. As that's rendering, you can see that's looking pretty good, but it still feels a little flat. All right. And this is where bump comes in. And so this is going to be a pretty problems. And oh, you can't see anything. All right. So as this renders, there are 2 problems. Any guesses? Haley.
Altering the original design, because I don't know, it looks way different than what the other one did.
It does.
The stones You can't really
Wait a
see
minute.
more of a gravel instead of a.
What is causing that?
UV.
Yes. I did not scale. Any guesses as to... If I zoom in here, you can see it a little bit better. But the problem that I'm thinking of is that actually the bump is too strong. And you may not get that until you see what it looks like when it isn't too strong. You'll also see this feels very pixelated. And that's because the size of the texture that I'm using is not particularly large. I'm using a texture that is, oh, wow, it's even smaller than I thought, 512 by 512. Okay. I would use at least 1024 by 1024, but probably 2048 by 2048 or 4096 by 4096. These are all multiples of each other. When you work in those specific dimensions, it's just optimized for the computer because the computer works in bits and bytes, and it's factors of 8. So that's the why and the how. So yeah, this is a very small texture file. So that's why we're getting the pixelation, but the bump is just way too strong. And I have found, usually, that, let me bring up my Hypershade again. So in my node editor, I've got, oops. Okay. So I've got my place to texture node. I've got my bump map. I also have this new node called bump 2D1. Okay, and what this is the node that defines how intense this bump is. So the bump value, that's what's being driven by the image, and you can see that as indicated by this box with the arrow, okay? Which, incidentally, if I click on that, it will take me to the image node, right? It's gonna take me to the input. So the value is what tells Maya what parts go up, or, you know, it's not, yeah, what parts go up and what parts go down. So a bump map is a grayscale image, as you've probably noticed. And the way that Maya interprets this information is anything that is white or that is brighter than 50% gray is going to go up. Anything that is darker than 50% gray is going to go down, or it's going to look like it's going down. Okay, a bump map doesn't actually affect the geometry. It only affects how the light bounces off of the geometry. So it's still a perfectly flat plane. It's just going to look like it's bumpier. That's the value. Now the depth is basically like a multiplier. Of you know, you can increase or lessen the effect. And I have found usually less than 0.1 is where I want to be. So I'll go to like 0.03, and I will hit render. And that render view will pop up somewhere, I'm sure. I just don't know where. There it is. Okay, that's still coming out too strong. If you see a lot of like blocky black, that usually means it's too strong. So I'm actually going to, I'm going to close that, and I'm going to do an IPR render. So bring IPR down, let's say over there. And then let's set that bump to like 0.01. Hit return. We're getting there, we can go even less, 0.002. That's looking better. I'm also going to zoom out a little bit because, again, this is such a small texture, it does not hold up well to extreme close-ups. Okay. So now we're getting some of that. And then I can also add, if I go back to my shader here, I'm going to add a little bit of specularity to this too. Doesn't have to be much. Okay. And actually, as I add a little bit, we see a problem, right? Now it looks like a weird shiny glass floor or something. Maybe it's like a laminate vinyl flooring or something. I don't know. It no longer looks like a brick. And that's because we're just applying kind of one smooth specular value to it. And so it's creating a mirror surface. So what we need to do is we need to apply texture to the roughness as well. All right, so if I click on the texture next to the roughness, I'm going to do the same sort of thing. Say File, and we're going to choose in that folder. I'm actually going to choose the rough shader and click Open. And you can see it doesn't seem to really update very well. I'm going to get that out of the way and hit IPR again. Restart the render. Okay, it's still not quite there. So let's look at our shaders. And oh, you know what? I don't think I don't want to break that connection. I want to apply it to the where I want to go. Stand by. I didn't actually want to apply that to the roughness. I want to apply it to the bump in the primary spec advanced. So I apply that there, and now you can see I also need to adjust my size. So graph my network, and then it's the texture node, and set those to repeat 5 times. And then my bump 2D also, I'm going to set this to 0.002. Go back to my renderer. And that's looking better, but I still think it's way too shiny. So we can just bring our face colors down. There we go. Okay. So this is kind of a quick overview of a 3-part shader. I'm not going to expect shader or specular maps for everything. I just kind of wanted to go through the process so you could understand what we're working towards and how it fits into a larger picture. So that's the quick kind of overview. But now let's get to something that you're going to be doing more frequently. And that's going to be just adding a little bit of detail to these objects. So we've got our back to our orange plastic ball. And the first thing that I want to do is add some color variation to it. All right. So I'm going to apply texture to the color. I'm not going to do a file texture. Right? Generally, I think most of you will be able to get by without doing a ton of file textures, because there's a bunch of presets already in it. There's both in the Maya section. You've got these 4 texture kind of sections. So we've got bulge, checker, and cloth, and we've got noise, and we've got fractal. There's also in the Renderman under patterns. There's a bunch as well. We can primarily stick with like the 2D textures in Maya. If I click on fractal, you can see what that does to the color. And I can right click in my hypershade on my red plastic, graph the network. All right, and you can see that this adds a fractal texture, and we've got our place 2D texture node. So the same format that we had before. But if we go to color balance, this is where I can set my color options. So I've got my default color, which I'm going to choose that orange again. Actually, we want that in color gain. There we go. So there's color gain. And then my color offset. Oops. color offset. There we go. I'm going to select that same orange, but I'm going to just slightly adjust it. So I'm going to make it a little bit darker and a little bit more red. Okay. Just set that default color back to white. That's fine. All right. So that's my color set. Now I want to adjust the texture itself. And that's where all of these fractal attributes come in. So I've got amplitude, which is kind of the intensity of it. And as a general rule of thumb, subtlety is king. Or queen. I don't want to, you know, one way or the other. But subtlety is definitely best if we're going for more kind of realistic, natural feeling, which is what we are going for. You bring the amplitude down, which basically decreases the contrast. We've got threshold, so if I bring that amplitude back up, you can kind of see. Threshold is like the how much. You can almost think of it as like, if you're a fan of sci-fi horror, it's like a virus is taking over the sphere and it's growing, and yeah. That's where my head's at anyway. We've got ratio, we've got frequency ratio, so if you bring that frequency up, it becomes a lot smaller. I probably shouldn't have made this quite so similar yet. We'll set it to black so we can see this a little bit better. If we bring it down, it's going to get larger. I'm actually going to keep it fairly small. Level minimum, again, so like how detailed are the distortions? Bias one way or the other, so you get it really sharp, or you can really kind of soften and feather that out. Again, I'm going for subtlety. Something like that I think works. And then I could also go into that Place 2D texture node and scale it up or scale it down if I still felt like I wasn't quite getting what I wanted. But I think I'm happy with that. Oh, I will set my color offset back to, whoops. Actually, this, nope, that's, yeah, that is it, but I'm gonna make it a little bit darker. Okay, I want to see the variation, but it is, again, super subtle. I'm gonna click back on my ball, go back to my shader options, and let's go to, here's my IPR render so we can see how this is working here. I'll bring my edge color down a little bit. Let's see, I've got my clear coat is off, iridescence is off, rough specular I'm going to turn off for now. Okay, so this is just what I'm dealing with. And I'm pretty happy with that. So now let's give it a bump. And again, we don't need to bring in an image texture for this. We certainly can, but we don't need to. So, excuse me. If we go up to diffuse roughness, or no, excuse me, not roughness, bump. Click on that. And let's see, we could go with, well, let's just go with a, we'll go with a noise just for now. All right, so true to form, as with most bumps, by default it's way too strong. So I'm going to go to my hypershade and my bump value. I need to bring that way down, so go like 0.005. And I don't think that's, I think that was too much, so let's bring that up. 0.036, there we go. Now we're getting something. That looks good and bumpy. So if we go too far, then we get that really dark black problem. There we go. 0.05 maybe. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we can add a bump like that. Again, if we decide that we don't really like how that looks, I can go back to, let me close this for a second. It appears if I have the IPR render open, then my material viewer doesn't update. So I'm going to close that now. This will update. Again, if I decide that I don't like that bump, I can right-click on bump and break the connection. If I want to apply the same bump to both the diffuse and the specular at the same time, I can go down to my globals right here, and I can apply the bump to both at the same time. This time, let's do fractal, just cause. Okay, so now it's affecting both the specular and the diffuse, but of course, it's way too strong. One. Yeah, and subtlety is a fantastic thing. I will also go to my place 2D texture, and I'm going to scale this up. So I want to set the repeat UV lower. So I'm going to go like 0.2. And you don't have to scale it evenly. You can, if you want it to be more stretched out, you can scale 1. I'll leave that at 1. Now we've got kind of vertical stretching. So if I select this and go back to IPR, you can see that now things are kind of stretched vertically. All right, and again, it just gives it more dimension. All right, now I can also get back into my specular, and maybe I want to make this a little bit rougher. And now that I've got some bump, that specular is really going to play in an interesting way. It's not just going to be a circular highlight. We can make it rougher. We can adjust the edge exponent. How much light we want that to kind of diffuse. Maybe I want to bring the edge color down and maybe bring the face color up. Make that a stronger highlight. Things of that nature. So now we've got, I think this is kind of the general knowledge that'll get you 80% of the way to your robots getting, textured in a more realistic feeling way. And I'm going to end this video here. I'm going to start a new one. I'll probably do a really short one for mesh lights, and then we'll do a longer one for something a little bit fancier.